proud of all of you. Under the Trump administration, the DOJ and the FBI will once again become the premier crime-fighting agencies on the face of the earth.
We're very proud of all of you. Under the Trump administration, the DOJ and the FBI will once again become the premier crime-fighting agencies on the face of the earth. 5:12 a.m. Washington, D.C. A cabinet official's house shattered. 20 kilos of heroin. $40 million in cash. A murder to silence. The Secretary of the Navy vanished into darkness. Something far worse was hiding behind those walls. This is where America woke up. Let me show you. Because a level of corrupt things that we learned after that turned out to be that they were doing in fact really bad things. Thinks he was a terrible person. Did terrible things. 5:12 a.m. Washington. Rain clung to the pavement and the neighborhood slept. Then headlights appeared. Quiet and deliberate. Unmarked SUV slid to a stop in front of the home of the Secretary of the Navy. Agents moved fast and focused. There was no knock, no warning. A steel battering ram struck the entrance. One blow. Two. On the third impact, the oak door collapsed. Wood splintering across the foyer. FBI and DEA agents poured inside. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Every room was searched, drawers ripped open. Behind the quiet furniture and family photos, there was nothing peaceful. Agents found 20 kilograms of heroin stacked in plastic wrap and $40 million in cash sealed inside black duffel bags. In a locked cabinet were shipping documents with cartel codes. But the most shocking discovery was the emptiness. Secretary of the Navy Jackson Reed was gone. No note, no phone, no trace. Only a powerful man who had vanished into the night. If you want the full truth behind what happened in Washington, hit like so this story reaches more people. The investigation did not begin with drugs or money. It began 6 months earlier with a missing woman, Sophia Hayes, 27, bright, ambitious, and suddenly gone. Her friends reported her disappearance after she stopped answering messages. At first, it looked like a simple missing person case. Detectives reviewed security footage from restaurants and luxury hotels in Washington. Again and again, the same pattern appeared. Sophia was never alone. She was always with Secretary of the Navy Jackson Reed. They walked side by side, ate together, entered elevators together. Text messages were recovered from Sophia's phone. She was worried. She had news to tell someone close. Then her phone went silent. 2 days after the report, a body was found on an empty lot at the edge of the city. Sophia Hayes, 2 months pregnant. The body of 27-year-old Sophia Hayes, who had been missing for 6 months, was found this morning on an empty lot on the eastern edge of Washington. There were no signs of robbery. Nothing was missing except time. The conclusion was brutal and direct. Someone wanted her quiet. A missing woman had become a homicide, and every trail pointed to the same powerful man who had now vanished. Sophia Hayes was alive, hopeful, and 2 months pregnant before someone decided silence was safer than her voice. If you believe she deserved justice, type justice for Sophia and the chase begins. The shock at federal headquarters was immediate. A missing official was serious. A dead woman was worse, but a Secretary of the Navy disappearing after a drug raid was beyond anything they had seen. No one could pretend anymore. A man with access to military routes and port schedules had vanished. Every agency went on alert. Teams spread across Washington, Maryland, and Virginia. Airports, ports, hotels, private marina docks. The order was short and cold. Find Jackson Reed. What investigators uncovered next explained everything. For 5 years, Reed had been living Second Life. Behind the polished speeches and ribbon cutings, he was quietly running maritime routes for CJNG, using his rank to move cargo unnoticed. His network was built for men with nothing to lose. Illegal entrants, escaped convicts, violent offenders who owed him loyalty. They handled packages at night and smiled in daylight. Nothing about them suggested a cartel. That was the point. Reed had used his authority to open doors others could not. Custom checks vanished. Inspectors were reassigned. Records were erased. The ocean became an invisible highway. When agents seized his home, they found maps of ports from Mexico to Texas marked with red circles. Houston stood out. It was the only location with a handwritten note. Last option. Within hours, surveillance teams picked up movement. Credit cards used near the coast. A rental vehicle heading south. Cameras along the interstate caught a single figure alone driving fast. The face was blurry, but the posture was unmistakable. Reed was running. The chase moved to the water. Coast Guard cutters, border patrol boats, a helicopter above. In the night, the Gulf looked empty. Only black waves and salt wind. But through night vision, there was motion. A speedboat slicing across the darkness. Engines roared. The stillness broke. Warning shots were fired. The boat swerved. Waves crashed over the bow. Voices shouted through loudspeakers. Stop the engine. Hands visible. The man at the wheel didn't stop. He pushed forward, desperate, eyes fixed on the open horizon. He knew what awaited on shore. Prison headlines, disgrace. The water was his only hope. Then the boat jerked. A line had caught the propeller. The engine died. Agents boarded in seconds. They found him slumped on the deck, breathing hard, drenched in salt water. There was no struggle now. He raised his hand slowly, defeated by the very ocean he once commanded. Jackson Reed was in handcuffs. A high-ranking official, once untouchable, now a fugitive caught in the dark. The radios confirmed it. A single message echoed across Washington. Subject in custody. But as the agents later discovered, Reed was only the beginning. The capture of Jackson Reed did not end the investigation. In many ways, it was only the opening move. As soon as he was secured on the deck of the patrol boat, FBI analysts began tearing into every device taken from his home. Computers, encrypted drives, burned phones, handwritten notes. What they found was not a trail. It was a map. Reed's life had been split in two. On the surface, he was a respected leader, a man trusted with fleets and strategy. Beneath it, he had built a criminal network that stretched across 3 states, and that network was still alive, still moving, still dangerous. At 2:14 a.m., a command center in Washington lit up with red markers. New teams were formed. Names appeared on screens, addresses, warehouses, storage units rented under fake identities, small offices that looked normal from the street, but inside carried a different reality. Stacks of documents, satellite phones, coordinated shipment schedules. The order came down, hit them all. No delays. Before sunrise, Washington, Maryland, and Virginia saw a coordinated operation unlike anything the region had experienced in years. Convoys rolled through empty streets. Federal agents moved with speed and purpose. Every location had to be secured at the same time. If even one suspect escaped, the entire structure could scatter. For years, Reed had appeared as a symbol of strength, someone who represented military discipline and national honor. Now, communities felt betrayed. The discovery that a respected official had secretly worked with dangerous criminals caused anger, confusion, and fear. Town hall meetings filled with frustrated residents who wanted explanations. Veterans who had once served under Reed wondered what else had been hidden. Families of missing people came forward with old suspicions, asking investigators to reopen cases. The scandal became more than a single crime. It became a question of how a man like this could rise so high without being stopped. Inside the command center, the work did not slow. Every seized document was scanned. Every phone was decrypted. Every shipping route was traced backward and forward. What investigators found was a system so complex and well organized that it could not have existed without years of quiet development. Some aspects were still unclear. Other pieces were painfully obvious. There were records of port delays that matched drug arrivals, customs forms that mirrored cartel transport schedules, and internal emails that made more sense when seen in context. The truth was that the network had been hiding in plain sight. It had operated in the shadows of routine work, using government structure to protect criminal activity. Yet, even as officials worked through evidence, another realization emerged. Reed's capture had removed the visible leader, but the machinery had not stopped immediately. Certain routes went silent, others became harder to track, as if someone had started shutting doors before agents reached them. Several names on the investigative board were still circled, not crossed out. Those individuals had not been found. Some could be accomplices, others could be victims of the system. The unanswered questions created a kind of tension that spread through the room. It was impossible to know how many people had acted willingly, How many had been misled, or how many had simply chosen not to ask questions? What could be seen clearly was the damage. Trust in internal structures had been shaken. Departments were forced to audit their own employees. Policies were rewritten. Access privileges were suspended. The idea that every worker wearing a badge was safe to rely on no longer felt certain. In the weeks following the arrest, reports came from smaller offices describing attempted data deletion, sudden resignations, and unreturned access cards. Some individuals disappeared quietly, leaving houses with lights still on and mail piling at the door. Reed sat behind bars awaiting charges. But the consequences of his actions would echo far beyond a courtroom. A criminal network had not simply used the government. It had grown inside it. And though one man had fallen, investigators knew that systems like this did not collapse overnight. The maps on the wall remained covered with pins and notes. Lines connecting ports and offices had been drawn over and over, but no one could erase them yet. There were still unanswered threads. There were still red circles marked pending. Reed had been the face of the operation. He had been caught, but there were shadows behind him, and every agent in the room understood what came next. The hardest work was not capturing a single man. The hardest work was rebuilding trust, repairing damage, and making sure no one like him ever stepped quietly into power again. The case of Jackson Reed did not fade when the handcuffs closed. It continued to echo through every corner of Washington. For weeks, investigators, journalists, and families asked the same question. How could this have happened? A respected leader trusted with the security of the nation had used his power to serve a secret life. The discovery of drugs, money, and a moated young woman broke something larger than a criminal network. It broke public confidence. New policies were drafted. Internal audits were launched across military departments, customs offices, and port authorities. Government employees who had once walked freely now faced questioning, reviews, and strict oversight. In some offices, people whispered because the betrayal felt personal. They had served next to Reed. They had trusted him. Now, every familiar face was suddenly uncertain. Among the public, the reaction was emotional. Veterans who had served under Reed expressed anger and disbelief. Families of missing women came forward hoping their cases would finally be re-examined. Communities near the ports demanded more protection and transparency. Even those who had no direct connection felt the sting of betrayal. This was not a cartel boss hiding in the shadows. It was a man wearing a government badge. When Sophia Hayes' story reached the news, flowers appeared at the empty lot where her body had been found. Strangers left notes, candles, and photographs. People who had never met her understood the tragedy. She had trusted someone who should have been safe. Her death became the moment the nation realized how deep the corruption had reached. But there was another lesson, one that mattered even more. Evil does not always arrive wearing a mask. Sometimes it wears a uniform. Sometimes it stands behind a podium. Sometimes it shakes your hand and smiles. The investigation reminded everyone that trust must be earned, not assumed, and that true accountability begins at the top. The country did not fall apart. Instead, it became alert. New whistleblower channels were opened. Training changed. Surveillance at port facilities doubled. People began to look closer, ask questions, and report suspicious patterns. The tragedy did not break the system. It forced the system to grow stronger. In the end, the story of Jackson Reed is not only about drugs, money, and power. It is about how quickly corruption can grow when no one is watching, and how important it is to stand up when something feels wrong. One woman's disappearance exposed a network hidden behind the walls of government. And though the scars remain, the truth finally came to light. If you believe stories like this should be told so that no family, no community, and no young woman is ever forgotten, then support this work. Hit like so others can see it. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think the government should do next. And if you want more investigations, more truth, and more answers, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter.